This is live from New Delhi. You're watching TT India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Sakal Bhattan. Coming up in the next hour, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi receives the Order of St. Andrew the Apostle, Russia's highest state award from President Vladimir Putin. On Russia-Ukraine conflict, Prime Minister stresses on dialogue and diplomacy for finding solution. After Moscow, Prime Minister Narendra Modi heads to Vienna, first visit by any Indian Prime Minister in over 40 years. US President Joe Biden hosts NATO's 75th anniversary summit in Washington, D.C. Ukraine conflict tops the agenda. Monsoon mayhem continues in India. Heavy rains lash Mumbai, Assam, Uttarakhand, Bihar and several other parts. The 22nd India-Russia Annual Summit was held in Moscow, which just got concluded. India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin held discussions on several issues that included Ukraine conflict as well. Prime Minister Modi assured Russian President Vladimir Putin that India is in favor of peace.
PM Modi's visit to Kremlin marks a significant chapter in the long-standing relationship between India and Russia. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Russian President Vladimir Putin convened for the 22nd annual bilateral summit, underscoring the deep ties between the two nations. India reiterated a clear policy of dialogue and diplomacy to end the conflict between Russia and Ukraine.
शांति की बहाली में भारत हर संभव सहयोग करने के लिए तैयार है और आपका भी सानुकूल विचार सुनकर के मुझे बहुत खुशी हुई और मैं भी आपको भी आश्वस्त करता हूं और विश्व समुदाय को भी आश्वस्त करता हूं कि भारत शांति के पक्ष में है और शांति के लिए मेरे मित्र राष्ट्रपति पुतिन की कल बातों को सुनकर के मेरे मन में एक आशा पैदा हुई है और मैं इसके लिए आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद करता हूं.
Russian President appreciated the India-Russia cooperation in sectors such as that of trade, commerce, security, innovation and thanked Prime Minister Modi for his efforts in Russia-Ukraine conflict.
Russia-India relations at present constitute a special and privileged strategic partnership. I appreciate the attention you pay to the most pressing issues, including your efforts to find ways to resolve the Ukraine crisis, primarily through peaceful means.
Central to their discussions are pressing economic issues and the geopolitical matters that included terrorism and availability of fuel globally. Describing Russia as India's all-weather friend, Prime Minister Narendra Modi praised President Putin's leadership in fortifying this enduring partnership over the past 2 decades.
जब दुनिया फूड, फ्यूल एंड फर्टिलाइजर के संकट से गुजर रही थी, हमारी मित्रता और हमारे सहयोग के कारण मैं मेरे देश के किसानों को फर्टिलाइजर में मुसीबत में नहीं आने दिया. फर्टिलाइजर की उनकी जो आवश्यकता है उसकी पूरी करने में हम सफल रहे और उसमें हमारी मित्रता का भी बहुत बड़ा रोल है और किसानों के हितों की रक्षा के लिए हम कमिटेड हैं.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited the All-Russian Exhibition Center in Moscow, where President Vladimir Putin accompanied him. The two leaders toured the Rosatom Pavilion, which is one of the largest exhibitions on the history of scientific and technological developments. Earlier in the day, Prime Minister Modi laid a wreath at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier in Moscow. The Tomb of the Unknown Soldier is a war memorial located at the Kremlin Wall, Moscow, that is dedicated to the Soviet soldiers who lost their lives during the Second World War. With Jessica Taneja and Tripti Tripachi's inputs, Tanvi Taneja for DD India.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi interacted with the Indian community in Russia at an event held in Moscow today. While interacting with them, Prime Minister referred to the visible transformation in India in the last 10 years and added that the objective of his government is to make India the third largest economy in the world in his third tenure. Prime Minister also underlined that through its committed efforts, India is making significant contribution to global prosperity as a Vishwa Bandhu or a friend to the world.
It was all excitement, warmth and affection among the Indian community in Moscow when they saw Prime Minister Narendra Modi. It was even more special as PM addressed them for the first time in his third tenure. He lauded their contribution in enhancing the India-Russia relationship. PM referred to the visible transformation in India in the last 10 years.
अपने तीसरे टर्म में मैं 3 गुनी ताकत से काम करूंगा। और ये भी एक संयोग है कि सरकार के कई लक्ष्यों में भी 3 का अंक छाया हुआ है। सरकार का लक्ष्य है तीसरे टर्म में भारत को दुनिया की तीसरी सबसे बड़ी इकोनॉमी बनाना।
PM Modi said that India's new momentum of growth will write a new chapter in the development of the world.
सेमीकंडक्टर से इलेक्ट्रॉनिक मैन्युफैक्चरिंग तक, ग्रीन हाइड्रोजन से इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल तक और वर्ल्ड क्लास इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, भारत की नई गति दुनिया के विकास का, और मैं बहुत जिम्मेवारी से कह रहा हूं, दुनिया के विकास का अध्याय लिखेगी। आज ग्लोबल इकोनॉमी की ग्रोथ में 15% भारत कंट्रीब्यूट कर रही है।
Prime Minister noted that India, through its committed efforts from tackling climate change to meeting sustainable development goals, is making significant contribution to global prosperity as a Vishwa Bandhu or a friend to the world.
21वीं सदी भारत की सदी है। आज विश्व बंधु के रूप में भारत दुनिया को नया भरोसा दे रहा है। न्यू इमर्जिंग मल्टीपोलर वर्ल्ड ऑर्डर में भारत को एक मजबूत पिलर के रूप में देखा जा रहा है। जब भारत पीस, डायलॉग और डिप्लोमेसी की बात कहता है तो पूरी दुनिया सुनती है।
PM lauded the efforts of the Indian community to nurture and nourish Indian cultural traditions in Russia and share its vibrancy with the Russian people. He encouraged the Indian community to continue playing a proactive role in forging a stronger and deeper partnership with Russia. He mentioned that a decision to open 2 new Indian consulates in Kazan and Ekaterinburg has been taken, which would give further boost to people-to-people ties. With inputs from Jessica Taneja in Moscow, Raghav Kumar Jha, DD India, New Delhi.
And Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Tuesday received Russia's highest state award, the Order of St. Andrew for Apostle, for his outstanding efforts to promote partnership and friendship between India and Russia. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is the first Indian leader to be conferred with this award. This award was instituted over 300 years ago. While accepting the honour, Prime Minister dedicated it to the people of India and to the traditional bonds of friendship between India and Russia.
On Tuesday, the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi officially received Russia's most prestigious civilian honour, the Order of St. Andrew the Apostle. The award recognises PM Modi's distinguished contribution to developing a privileged strategic partnership between Russia and India and fostering friendly ties between the two countries.
यह सम्मान केवल मेरा सम्मान नहीं है। यह 140 करोड़ भारतवासियों का सम्मान है। यह भारत
और रूस की सदियों पुरानी गहरी मित्रता और आपसी विश्वास का सम्मान है.
The latest award is another feather in his cap. Over the years, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been honored by countries and organizations worldwide for his exceptional leadership and contributions. Some of these awards include: on March 22, 2024, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was conferred the Order of the Druk Gyalpo, Bhutan's highest civilian decoration, by the King of Bhutan in a public ceremony at Thimphu. On 25th August 2023, the Indian Prime Minister was conferred with the Grand Cross of the Order of Honour by President Katerina Sakalaropoulou of Greece. On July 13, 2023, PM Modi was conferred with France's highest award, the Grand Cross of the Legion of Honour, in Paris. On June 25, 2023, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi conferred the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi with its highest civilian honour, the Order of the Nile, in Cairo. On May 22, 2023, PM Modi was conferred the highest honour of Fiji, the Companion of the Order of Fiji, in recognition of his global leadership. On December 21, 2020, the US President Donald Trump conferred the highest decoration, the Legion of Merit, degree Chief Commander, to PM Modi. The Legion of Merit is the highest degree of the Chief Commander and is a prestigious award conferred by the US President. On August 24, 2019, PM Modi was conferred the King Hamad Order of the Renaissance during his visit to Bahrain in recognition of his efforts to strengthen bilateral relations with the Gulf nation. On August 24, 2019, PM Modi was honoured with UAE's highest civilian award, the Order of Zayed, in recognition of his pivotal role in building the strategic relationship between the two countries. On June 8, 2019, PM Modi was conferred with the Maldives' highest honour, the Rule of Nishan Izzuddin, during his state visit to that country. On February 10, 2018, PM Modi was conferred the Grand Collar of the State of Palestine, the highest Palestinian honour for foreign dignitaries. On April 3, 2016, during his visit to Saudi Arabia, Prime Minister Narendra Modi was conferred Saudi Arabia's highest civilian honour, the King Abdulaziz Sash. Apart from the highest civilian honours, PM Modi has also been conferred with several awards by prestigious organisations across the globe. In 2019, PM Modi was conferred the Global Goalkeeper Award by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. The first ever Philip Kotler Presidential Award was given to the Indian Prime Minister in 2019. This award is offered annually to the leader of a nation. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was conferred with the Champions of the Earth 2018 Award for Peaceful Leadership by UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Champions of the Earth is the highest UN honour in the field of environment. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi was conferred with the prestigious Seoul Peace Prize for 2018. It is awarded biennially to those individuals by Seoul Peace Prize Cultural Foundation who have made their mark through contributions to the harmony of mankind, reconciliation between nations, and to world peace. The Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is a people's leader dedicated to solving their problems and improving their well-being. Fuzail Ahmed's report for DD India.
DD India's Jessica Taneja joins us live from Moscow. Jessica has covered the entire Prime Minister's visit to Russia, and I also take this opportunity to welcome Ambassador Anil Kumar Trignath, former senior diplomat. Thank you very much. Namaste, sir. Let's quickly go to Jessica first to sum up the visit. Jessica, how do you really look at it? From receiving the highest civilian honor in Russia to conversations revolving around fuel, fertilizer, terrorism, cooperation in economic sphere, defense, etc. And then also taking the, putting all speculations to rest and taking Russia-Ukraine conflict discussion head on with the Russian president. What do you think has been one of the highest points of this visit, or many high points rather?
Well, you're correct in pointing out there were many high points, including the ones that you mentioned, specifically talking about the Russia-Ukraine conflict that has been watched globally. And yesterday you saw what happened in Ukraine. So, of course, the Prime Minister also did not mince his words in saying that India does not want this prolonged war or conflict to continue and would hope for any peaceful resolution That includes dialogue and diplomacy, and particularly the Prime Minister's words stressing the fact that solutions cannot be found on the battlefield. Now, this is the official line that the Indian ministry and the Indian officials have taken so far. Pardon me for that disruption there, Sakal. The wind is sort of not playing the wind is sort of creating a problem here. But at this point, continue and go back to where I was. Is the fact that the Russia-Ukraine conflict was the center of discussion, not just today, but even yesterday at the dinner, which Prime Minister had with Russian President Vladimir Putin. So the stress on the Russia-Ukraine conflict has been quite a bit. India has said that it is open to exploring ideas on where peace and stability can be brought about, because the kind of impact that this war has created, especially the economic impact across the world, certainly calls a pause in what we see in the neighborhood right here on the streets of Moscow. Well, the picture is slightly different, but you know, geopolitics is playing out very differently at this time.
Yes, geopolitics playing out differently at this time. Jessica, let's take this thought to Ambassador Trigniat here. So, what are your thoughts? We'd like to know. And also, Jessica spoke about impact. So, how do you see this panning out from here? The impact of Russian President and India's Prime Minister in single frame. This visit has been keenly watched by the rest of the world, particularly Western media. How do you look at the overall deliverables and how India has made its intent once again clear that we believe in multipolarity, but we follow our foreign policy independently?
Well, you are absolutely right. And in fact, this visit, if you come to think of it, is marked by symbolism, a huge substance, and reiterating the special status and the overall strength of the bilateral relationship that is there. That means you are trusted, you have a strategic partnership during which you can talk to each other freely, openly, and clearly. And so there was a free, frank discussion. As far as the Russia-Ukraine war, India reiterated its position, which has been there. Prime Minister Modi, as you know, was at the G7 and had met President Zelensky and several other world leaders. And at the same time, now here in Russia, he has been continuing with what he started from day one when the war started, that peace is the only way out. He has said that bombs and guns don't solve any problems. So therefore, the battlefield does not solve the problem. It has to be on the table, and that's what he has tried to assess probably and very clearly mentioned it too. So therefore, one thing I would like to tell you that the reaction by President Zelensky was over the board and over the top and was not necessary. It was totally irresponsible, but he himself has been asking along with other leaders
would that be of any
India
consequence,
should play a bigger role. Should play a bigger role. And this is a relationship of consequence. That's the important thing. And it is a very diversified relationship, and which is come to stay, which will continue to stay apace. I mean, you know, the trade target has been set to $100 billion. Today we have $65 billion. We were struggling at $10 billion earlier in the defense, in the space, and civil nuclear cooperation, or for that matter, in the Far East.
Yes.
All these are going to be eventually figuring into the agreements that are going to be signed. And so bilaterally, I think we are in a strong place. And Prime Minister Modi spoke about the 3 Fs, the fertilizer, fuel, and food. I mean, those are very important points because of which India has been continuing to import a lot of food from Russia.
Yes.
And that has ballooned it. Now, that will also provide a strategic opportunity to Russia to invest in India's critical sectors, including in the defense, in the Make in India and others.
Yes, defense and trade and expanding the trade basket, the nitty-gritties of bilateral, Jessica, would you like to add more to that?
Well, as Ambassador Trigniat pointed out, talking about the 3 Fs, that has been the focus of this visit as well, and talking about, looking at bilateral trade to reach at $100 billion by 2030 is the target set, where you could see diversification and co-production of technology as well in many fields. And if you go through with the joint statement and you see the kind of diversification that India is looking at, particularly with Russia, would go beyond energy trade. While energy isn't crucial because it drives the economic engine of the country, of course, India has been the recipient of discounted Russian crude for the last 3 years, and that has also led to a trade imbalance between the two, which is $65 billion, out of which $60 billion is only oil trade. So of course, India has taken those issues into consideration, and also ironing out the rupee ruble system and making sure that the banking systems and the mechanisms are in place to ensure smooth facilitation of businesses on both ends, and that perhaps would reinvigorate the relationship that both the leaders have envisioned. And as a matter of fact, if the world watches closely as to how India navigates this relationship in a world of multipolarity, this is certainly a vision which is shared by Russia as well. And both India and Russia, beyond multipolarity, also look at the world as in a very polycentric view. And of course, making sure that Russia, for India, it is a priority to make sure that Russia doesn't become a vassal to China, because currently that has been a concern on the Indian side. But again, all initiatives in hand, India will make whatever effort it can to ensure that Russia is not reduced to as a junior partner to China, and India continues to offer that crucial support to Russia, which holds considerable influence in the continental neighborhood that we're surrounded with, because Russia, security, peace and stability in the region is more important for the Asian security as well.
Right. Your thoughts on this, Ambassador, ensuring that Russia is not further isolated or alienated, but yet at the same time putting all the speculations to rest. Indian Prime Minister did take up Russia-Ukraine not once, multiple times, as pointed out by our correspondent in Moscow, she's tracking it closely. That there was a strong message out there.
Well, India has been, if you come to think of it, from the day one of the war, has been propagating that dialogue, diplomacy, peace and respect for the UN Charter are very important. And that's precisely what Prime Minister Modi has said. And after his visit in the G7, I mean, there is a direct connect with this now. Here also, again, he's telling President Putin, which he had told earlier in Samarkand, this is not an era of war. He's telling them that we should work for peace. And President Putin apparently must have given him his contours of what kind of peace he wants and what kind of role India can play. So India can be an honest interlocutor in this. As far as China question is concerned, I fully agree with Jessica. The thing is that due to the because Russia looks at this war not as a war between Russia and Ukraine, it is a war between Russia and the West, especially the United States. And therefore, China has been, due to this particular compulsion, they need China to counter the West. And that's why their closer relationship that is being seen. But that is not at the expense of India. And likewise, India is an important partner for Russia in order to counter the Chinese hegemony in the Russian geostrategic space.
As a potent force, Ambassador, so from here on, would you say that this relationship has moved multifold, the way it's panned out, considering what is happening in the war theatre? How do you look at this relationship consolidating further at this point where we're looking at a divided world?
Well, the world will remain divided. I mean, and I personally feel that we are heading towards a Cold War 2.0 kind of a scenario. Many people may disagree with that. And India will be another pole. And Prime Minister actually mentioned it briefly in the multipolarity that India would also be a pole. So I think that will continue to happen there. But India has played that role earlier, and India will be able to play that role with the strategic autonomy. That is very much part of it.
Yeah.
But relationship bilaterally, I think that this is one of the most expensive relationships.
Okay.
So wide and with a very gamut of everything that could think of: defense, security, space, civil nuclear cooperation, counterterrorism, and everything. Whatever under the sun comes under this. Now there are the new areas of cooperation that is in the Arctic, in the connectivity corridors like Chennai and Vladivostok corridor, or for that matter, North-South transport corridor, which needs to pick up. And also in the Eurasian space, there is a greater cooperation that is taking place. So I see that the relationship is going to become far more deepened and far more substantive over time to come.
Okay. Jessica, would you like to come in here? And also from you, would like to know, this meant a lot for Kremlin. The rare gesture where you have the Deputy Prime Minister receiving the red carpet being rolled out and of course, the highest Russian civilian honor. We were talking to one of our guests from Moscow saying that Modi, quote unquote, is a big deal in Russia. So this has been really, really keenly followed by not only Russian media, but world media. But I just want to know from you, how has Russian media picked this up and how significantly they look at it?
Well, the Russian media has played it to the optics that one had already anticipated, is to also show that President Putin is not isolated, and it continues to engage with a major power like India as well in its neighborhood, given the fact that we also face a significant threat from China at this point, but also signaling that it will not be reduced to a junior partner.
Okay, we'll try and get back to
trajectory with India as well.
Okay, Jessica, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I will repeat that. Well, the Russian media has been able to play this in a sense that would work perfectly for the optics of Russian President Vladimir Putin, who's also showing, as a matter of fact, that he is not isolated or alienated. And this visit sort of cements and reaffirms that. And of course, having an important partner like India, which has had, which of course has practices strategic autonomy, as Ambassador Viena also pointed out. Interestingly, this works well for Vladimir Putin back home as well. So you see the previous visits of Vladimir Putin, one to China, then to North Korea, and surprisingly to Vietnam as well, showing that there is a certain influence that the Russian president still holds. We're talking about Vladimir Putin, who was the deputy prime minister in the 1990s, then in 2001 when he became the president, until we're talking now 2024. So, this does send a good message back home for the Russian president as well, and showing that despite the Western sanctions, despite the alienation and isolation, in fact, Russia, as you know, is the most sanctioned country in the world, along with North Korea. So, so this does send a message to his people as well, that he still continues to hold that considerable sway in geopolitics and still a leader for them who would be able to find the right course.
Yeah.
But only time will tell as to how things really work out, because everyone at this point is calling for a moment to pause those activities in Ukraine. One we saw yesterday was condemned even by our Prime Minister.
Absolutely. And that pause is something which is not happening. I mean, Ambassador Trinidad, your thoughts? There were very strong comments, interesting comments rather, in that event. The community outreach event by the Prime Minister himself was very engaging. And when Prime Minister said, besides other things, that when India speaks diplomatically, the world takes a note, the world listens. So for Kremlin, I mean, Kremlin needs New Delhi more than, how do you look at the balance here?
I think we both need each other. It is
but who
not
needs,
something
who needs the other person more? That's the question.
Well, in that sense, I think India is in a better placed situation, because we have equally good relations with the United States, with the West, and India is looking to be a bridge builder between the East and the West, and the North and the South, and also following our G20 principles and the Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam and all. So India is far more better placed in that situation. But one thing is there, we should also, what Jessica mentioned is right. But at the same time, today, Russia is the chair of the BRICS. And this year, you might see 30, 40 countries present there in the BRICS summit, meeting there, or the outreach summit, which will happen. So which will also indicate that Russia is not really isolated in that sense. And they have already completely decided to dissociate from the US dollar, and they are coming up with their own currency mechanisms and things like that. So we are looking at, as I mentioned earlier, we are looking at a more divided world rather than a world that is willing to live in peace and happiness.
And India taking the lead position there as well, and not only as a leader of the global South. I'm sorry, I'll have to wrap it up here, Ambassador Trinidad, but it's always such a pleasure talking to you, sir. And Jessica, Taneja, thank you very, very much for joining us live from Moscow, and for all your reports. Thank you, both of you.
Pleasure.
And let's now shift our focus to other lead stories on this broadcast. US President Joe Biden is hosting NATO heads in Washington on Tuesday for their annual summit. Biden prioritized restoring US alliances abroad to counter autocracies in his foreign policy. The outcome of the November elections could significantly impact NATO and Europe's future. Former US President Donald Trump suggested he might not defend NATO members below the defense spending target if re-elected. Trump also questioned the aid given to Ukraine in its conflict with Russia. NATO, now 75 years old, has refocused on opposing Putin's attack and welcomed Finland and Sweden as new members. The Ukraine-Russia war will dominate private talks among NATO leaders, and the summit agenda includes military and financial aid for Ukraine and discussing potential NATO membership for Kyiv. Shifting focus to now updates coming in on Israel-Hamas conflict, where Hamas chief on Monday has said that Israel's latest operation in Gaza could jeopardize ceasefire talks. The Israeli army released a video on Monday showing ground forces operating in Gaza. The Israeli military says it had been mounting an operation against terror infrastructure in Gaza and that it had taken out of action more than 30 terrorists who posed a threat to Israeli troops. Israeli military later issued new evacuation orders for Gaza City areas of Sabra, Rimal, Tel Aviv, Hava and Daraj, telling people to head to their Deir Balha in central Gaza. Israel's latest retaliations come as Egypt, Qatar and United States stepped up efforts to mediate a ceasefire agreement between Israel and the Hamas. Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has discussed on Tuesday in Cairo efforts to reach a ceasefire in Gaza with US. Central Intelligence Agency Director Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant has approved a plan to begin drafting ultra-Orthodox Jews into the military. The move comes as Israel seeks to strengthen its military amid ongoing conflicts. Ultra-Orthodox parties crucial to Netanyahu's coalition oppose conscription due to concerns over maintaining religious customs. Despite protests, Israel's Supreme Court recently ruled in favor of drafting ultra-Orthodox seminary students. This decision has sparked demonstrations both in support and against the conscription. On to French polls now. Well, after the French elections produced no clear majority for one political party or bloc, lawmakers are debating behind the scenes who might be able to lead the government. And it comes as President Macron heads to Washington, D.C., despite some of his team reportedly suggesting against it, which is interesting with the country's governance so uncertain. DD India's Stuart Smith reports.
Deadlock remains here in Paris as politicians from all sides of the political spectrum try to work out a potential path to government. After the shocking election result as it appeared on Monday, it's clear that there is no majority in Parliament that could be the obvious candidate to create a government and to nominate a Prime Minister, which means negotiations and debates about who could potentially align enough of the lawmakers to create a government. There seems to be no rush. President Macron going to Washington, D.C. for the NATO summit on Wednesday. He postponed that trip by a day, but there is a sense of urgency in that until a government is arranged and until a Prime Minister is selected, there can be no legislation passed in France. A deadline of sorts is coming up. That's on July 18th when lawmakers head back to Parliament for the first time, some returning, some new to Parliament, and that's when we will start to know what kind of blocs are forming in the legislature. There were, of course, those political alliances that we saw throughout the election, but those are not necessarily the groupings we'll see in Parliament. So once that date comes, there'll be a better idea about which MPs, which political parties are happy to work with others. But throughout Monday and Tuesday, we've heard politicians from the right say they wouldn't work with a government that's on for the left. We've heard centrist politicians rule out the far left and the far right. So everyone is ruling out everyone else, making this a very difficult debate to have. And it means that there could potentially be weeks or months before we get an outcome as to who will lead France. Stuart Smith in Paris, reporting for DD India.
In an update from Russia-Ukraine war on the 865th day of the attack, Russia's Astrakhan and Volgograd airports have resumed flights after they had been closed due to Ukrainian drone attack. As per the Russian Aviation Authority, Russia's air defense systems destroyed 38 drones that Ukraine launched overnight on several Russian regions, Russia's defense ministry said earlier. Meanwhile, with the upcoming NATO summit, the Kremlin has said on Tuesday it would closely follow this week's NATO summit because the alliance had declared Moscow its enemy and sought to defeat Russia. Well, the cliche goes, when it rains, it pours. India's monsoon fury has thrown life out of gear in places from the west to the east of the country, and over 3,000 villages across 27 districts in the northeastern state of Assam remains inundated. More than 48,000 flood victims are living in their relief camps. The rains have forced several families to be evacuated from the hill state of Uttarakhand as well and northern state of Himachal Pradesh. Mihir Maikuri reports.
Various parts of the country are struggling to cope with the incessant rains. In India's financial capital, Mumbai, incessant rains since Sunday night continue to cause waterlogging in many areas. The Colaba area recorded the highest rainfall at 144.5 millimeters. Heavy rainfall was also reported in Baikula, Matunga, Sion and Vikhroli. The city's vital local trains were affected by the downpour. Mumbai's civic body, BMC, has deployed water pumps at various locations to drain flood waters. Due to the heavy rainfall, holidays have been declared in several districts including Mumbai, Pune, Sindhudurg and Raigarh. And both campuses of Mumbai University have been closed as a precaution. Heavy monsoon rains are wreaking havoc on the hills of the country. Following heavy rainfall in parts of Uttarakhand's Kumaon region, in Udham Singh Nagar district, due to waterlogging at several locations, 850 members from 232 families have been moved to safe places. In Banbasa, Champawat district, nearly 170 flood-affected individuals have also been relocated to safe areas.
जहां संपर्क नहीं हो पा रहा है, पुल बह गए हैं, वहां पर कुछ वैली ब्रिज भेजे जा रहे हैं। उन सबको हमारा पूरा प्रयास है कि सबसे पहले जो है हमारा जो जनजीवन जो काफी प्रभावित हुआ है वो सामान्य हो।
Spell of heavy rains is also causing significant inconvenience in the Himalayan state of Himachal Pradesh, especially in its capital Shimla. The Met Office forecasts heavy rainfall across most parts of the state until 10th to 12th of July.
शिमला की बात करें सिटी की तो 44 mm के आसपास बारिश रिकॉर्ड की गई थी। कसौली, रामपुर, कुफरी, पंडो है, यहाँ पे मॉडरेट रेनफॉल थी और बाकी क्षेत्रों में हल्की बारिश रिपोर्ट की गई थी।
In India's northeastern state of Assam, recent days have seen a decrease in rainfall, gradually improving the flood situation. The flood-related deaths in Assam has surpassed 70. The Brahmaputra and 8 other rivers continue to flow above danger levels in several critical areas. Over 3,000 villages across 27 districts remain inundated, affecting over 1.8 million people. The hardest hit districts include Barpeta, Darang, Golaghat and South Salmara. So far, more than 48,000 flood victims have taken refuge in 543 relief camps. Heavy rains in Uttar Pradesh's Ayodhya have caused the Saryu River to rise, leading to flood-like situations. Similarly, in the state of Bihar, the Gandak River's increased water level has triggered floods in Gopalganj district, submerging villages and causing hardship for residents evacuating their homes. Mihir Maikuri, reporting for DD India.
And now let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. Philippines has rejected China's accusation that its grounded warship on the contested Second Thomas Shoal in the South China Sea had damaged the coral reef ecosystem in the area. Philippines laid the blame for damaging the marine environment on Beijing instead. United States has agreed to forgive $35 million of Indonesia's debt over 9 years in exchange for Indonesia's commitment to restore and preserve coral reefs. Coral reefs are under increasing threat globally due to climate change, which is raising sea temperatures. The Nasdaq and the S&P 500 opened at record levels on Tuesday, supported by new gains in semiconductor and mega-cap technology stocks as investors awaited comments from Federal Reserve on the central bank's monetary policy path. From a diva commanding the stage to a punk rock-loving hooligan, a new generation of clowns took to the stage at the start of the London Festival celebrating contemporary clowning. Running until July 26, the London Clown Festival showcases clowning and physical performance from Britain and other countries. Religious leaders in Indian diaspora and the US applaud Prime Minister Modi for fostering inclusive growth and equality among minorities in India over the past decade. They've expressed gratitude at a roundtable meeting co-organized on Monday by the Indian Minorities Foundation and the Unity of Faiths Foundation. praising Prime Minister Modi for making India a safe haven for minorities and promoting global harmony. Participants highlighted Prime Minister Modi's transformative leadership, emphasizing India's inclusive development under his tenure and its emergence as a symbol of unity worldwide. They said during the tenure of Prime Minister Narendra Modi for 10 years, all communities have developed equally and inclusively, as a result of which India has also given a message of universal brotherhood and communal harmony to the world. Well, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has had a successful Russia visit, and we discussed that. And now he is going to be in Austrian capital Vienna. An Indian Prime Minister is visiting Austria after over 40 years or 4 decades to not only mark 75 years of diplomatic relations, but also take India-Austria relations forward. DD India's Gautam Roy reports.
An Indian Prime Minister landing on Austrian soil after over 40 years, when the two nations are also marking 75 years of their friendship.
The visit is going to give great dynamism to this partnership. It's going to give the high-level political visibility that this relationship requires, and it's a relationship that has been performing reasonably well. And with this visit, we expect it to gain dynamism and content.
The substantial part of Prime Minister Modi's Austria visit will be unfolding on Wednesday, where he'll not only call on Austria's President Alexander Van der Bellen at the Hofburg Palace, but also hold delegation-level talks with his Austrian counterpart, Federal Chancellor Karl Nehammer, at the Federal Chancellery after receiving a ceremonial reception. The day will also see the Prime Minister meeting key Austrian influencers. But another highlight for Wednesday will be the maiden Austria-India CEOs meeting, where an effort will be made to give further impetus to the business ties between the two nations, including their respective startup ecosystems.
Indian companies that are operating in Austria, and there are several Austrian companies operating in India. And as part of the program, there will be an interaction with Indian and Austrian CEOs to try and see how we can move this partnership forward, especially in niche technologies, clean technologies, and also in terms of bringing some of our startups together. There is a good groundwork has already been laid, and what we need is a quantum leap in this partnership, and this is what I think this visit will succeed in doing.
Vienna is also the city of Western classical music, which was the home to great composers such as Mozart and Beethoven, among others. And he also got a melodic reception from Vienna University Philharmonic, whose director is also an Indian diaspora member. Clearly, there are multiple elements to Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Austria visit, which have the potential of taking its ties with India to greater heights in several aspects of the relationship.
In just the last few months, India and Austria have added new elements to their already extensive relations, such as a comprehensive migration and mobility agreement, as well as an India-Austria startup bridge. But there are many more areas that are still left to be fully explored, be it semiconductors or AI, advanced telecommunications, aerospace, and much progress can be expected to be made in this historic Austria visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. With camera person Rakesh Singh, Gautam Roy, Vienna, Austria, DD India.
The Indian Prime Minister's visit to Austria is a much-awaited trip because the last such prime ministerial visit to this key European nation took place more than 4 decades ago. India already has a special place in the hearts of many Austrians and other nationalities who have made it their home over the years, including Indian diaspora. The India's Gautam Roy tells you why in this particular report.
Be it yoga, Ayurveda, or traditional art and culture like Bharatanatyam, India has had a special place due to its soft power in distant lands for centuries. Radha Anjali, her given name by her Indian guru, is of Austrian parentage, married to an Iranian and running a Bharatanatyam school, Natya Mandir, in Austria's capital Vienna since the 80s. She says, as India has been gaining global prominence in recent years, interest in its art, culture and traditions has also been growing.
Performed almost all over Europe and in India, and well, I'm dancing the last maybe 45 years. Many years before, Indian culture was very much unknown, And during the last 10-20 years, it is much more prominent.
Radha Anjali's students in Vienna come from different parts of the world as they are drawn to India's mesmerizing dance forms and classical music, apart from those with Indian origins looking to remain connected with their roots.
Born in India, in Rajasthan actually, and just so we were quite disconnected from our culture originally, and it's a very good way to reconnect, and to actually know more in detail what's the Indian culture all about.
I was always mesmerized by it, and I also grew up watching Bollywood and dance videos when I was in Bangladesh and also here. So it kind of was in me to like these kind of dances.
I did yoga, a lot of yoga. I did my study in yoga at yoga teacher, and I were in Indian, and it was for me completely wow. Bharatanatyam.
I did Bharatanatyam a bit when I was a child in Sri Lanka, and I took a break due to a number of reasons. And after coming to Vienna, I wanted to get back to dancing. I was doing a bit of African dancing, but I felt that I needed to get back to Bharatanatyam. It just feels more connected.
As India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi visits Austria, it's only natural for all things Indian to figure even more prominently in the host country, leading to more awareness, interactions and proximities between the two cultures and people. India has always had deep wells of art, culture and traditional knowledge to draw from for any individual from any part of the world. But with rising consciousness about India, its economic prowess or even the capabilities of its individuals, there are imprints of India now all over the world, and Austria is no stranger to it. With cameraperson Pramod Negi, Gautam Roy in Vienna for DD India.
And upon concluding his visit to Russia, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has also proceeded to Austria for the second leg of his tour. Austrian Ambassador to India, Katharina Wiese, talks about the first visit of an Indian Prime Minister in 40 years, with this year also marking 75 years of bilateral relations.
This is really a very important visit for us. It is the first visit of an Indian Prime Minister, as you mentioned, after 41 years to Austria, 40 years after an Austrian Federal Chancellor visited India. And this visit is taking place in a year when we are celebrating 75 years of bilateral relations. So we are happy about that fact also, that this high-level visit is now sort of a manifestation of the very good place that we are in at the level of our bilateral relations.
Ambassador also mentioned about the economic relations of both the countries, highlighting it as the most important part of the bilateral relationship.
Our bilateral economic and business relationship is a very important central part of our bilateral relationship. We have been improving that also over the past years. There's more interest, not only from Austrian companies, but also from other companies. There's a more international focus and interest also in what is happening in India. And also from Austrian company side, obviously, we have 150 Austrian, so subsidiaries of Austrian companies in India.
The Indian diaspora has expressed happiness at the upcoming visit of Prime Minister Modi to Austria and says that it's the matter of pride that an Indian Prime Minister is visiting the country after 40 years. Listen in.
It's been over 40 years since an Indian Prime Minister visited India, so a long wait for the 31,000 strong Indian diaspora is ending today. Let's try and find out what are their aspirations and with what kind of hope have they come to greet Prime Minister Modi here in Vienna today. Could you tell us your name and what has brought you here? Prime Minister Modi is coming here. You're all dressed up, it seems, to see him.
We are super happy and excited to meet Prime Minister, and we would like to congratulate him for the third time he is winning the elections, and we are super happy.
We are very happy to receive Mr. Modi here, and we would look forward definitely to easier visa processes and easier, parents can come in for longer periods and things like that. That is something I would definitely personally look forward to.
I'm very happy, and this is very proud moment to meet Prime Minister.
40-year-long wait is coming to an end when India and Austria are also celebrating 75 years of their friendly relations, and there are a lot of expectations as well, and we'll have to wait and see what all can be fulfilled in this one visit, and then of course in the future as well. With camera person Rakesh Kumar, Gautam Roy, Viena, Austria, DD India.
And let's quickly go live across to Viena, where DD India's Gautam Roy joins us live. Gautam. All right, Gautam is there. Gautam, we saw all your reports from all things Indian to the substantive part of this visit and why it is so significant, not only for Austria but for India. But let's start with the interaction that you just had with the diaspora there. And I think it is just a matter of hours when Prime Minister Modi will be landing there. To begin with, an overview of the significance of this visit, Gautam, in terms of deliverables, and what does this visit mean for both countries?
Well, to put it simply, Sakal, it means a lot because it's been 75 years that India and Austria have had diplomatic relations, and this is a relationship that has been fruitful to a certain extent till now. And now that after 40 years an Indian Prime Minister is coming to Austria, to Vienna, there is a lot of hope, a lot of anticipation that this will be taken even further. It is not just for the two governments, it's for the people as well, and even the Indian diaspora is an intrinsic part of that. They're 31,000 strong. May not be a huge number, but still they are in a fairly good position. Most of them are professionals. They also work for a lot of these unilateral UN-related bodies that are there, headquartered in Vienna as well, such as the International Atomic Energy Agency, and even OPEC Plus, they are headquartered here. So a lot of people are here as well, and they have their own aspirations, certain cultural aspirations. They're seeking their space here, which I'm sure Prime Minister Modi would be made well aware of if he's not aware of it already. But as far as the business ties are concerned, the trade is concerned, already $3 billion of annual trade takes place between these two countries. Remember, Austria is part of the European Union as well. We're still working on an India-EU pact. If that happens, where Austria can also play a key role in making sure that we get there, then of course it will get another major boost. Investment is another area. Collaboration in high-tech spaces and startups, in funding startups, is something that is being looked at very keenly. So a lot is in the process. It's being accelerated as well, and that is where all these things will be explored, how to take them further, to give them greater pace, to make the progress faster as well.
Business component of this visit is also very important. If you could also run us through that, as well as Prime Minister's itinerary. Some very interesting things also lined up. I mean, of course, the business meetings, but Prime Minister will be meeting with the influencers there, and of course the diaspora event, which I'm sure all Indians out there are waiting with bated breath.
Oh yeah, that's a headline event for them. That's happening tomorrow and Wednesday in a place called Sofian Saleh here in Vienna. And people have been really hankering. They've been badgering the Indian Embassy for invitations. Unfortunately, not everyone can be accommodated, but as many as possible people are going to be accommodated over there. But the day begins with a lot of action tomorrow itself. On Wednesday, a substantial part of the visit is happening tomorrow on Wednesday at 9:55 a.m. That's when the PM will head for the Federal Chancellery, where he'll meet his counterpart, Chancellor Karl Nehammer. They will hold their talks at the delegation level as well. There will be statements to the media that will tell us what was the tone and tenor and the substance of their interaction. And he'll call on the President of Austria as well, Alexander Van der Bellen. And at the same time, he will also be meeting some influencers. But what is unique about this visit is this India-Austria CEO meeting, where about 14-15 Indian CEOs of different companies, especially niche tech companies, 5 of them are startups, 2 in aerospace alone. And there's an Austrian component. The Austrian side will be represented by 28 companies of a similar nature, big companies and companies that are also into metal manufacturing and sustainable practices like recycling plastic. They will all have their interaction and brief the leaders as well as to where they feel more needs to be done and where there is a scope for doing more as well, to ensure that India and Austria have better business relations, they make better progress together.
Gautam, before I leave you, a quick one on that Radha Anjali Bharatanatyam school report. I mean, one is really convinced that there are a lot of India's, cultural footprints out there with nationals from students from Sri Lanka and elsewhere in the world picking yoga, picking Bharatanatyam. So India's soft power, at least I can say ruling, or really, I mean, getting a lot of prominence and popularity in Austria.
Well, you know what happens, Akhil, is that in places like Vienna, which is a sort of a melting pot, because I mentioned the UN institutions are here, people of different nationalities have come through the decades here, especially after, the EU was formed, there was certain opening up as well in public schools. English began being taught at a very young age to children, apart from German, which is the main language here. A lot of people have come in, different influences have come in. For example, yoga has been here for a long time. People don't even know that yoga has its Indian origins, but now, since India is getting global prominence, they're realizing, this comes from India.
Okay.
Bharatanatyam comes from India. Classical music of a different kind, the Hindustani classical music, South Indian classical music comes from India.
Okay.
They're getting to realize that, and there's a new respect, newfound respect for Indians, the kind of professionalism and the kind of historical depth that India has. That has become realized as well, and they find out that we've been a great civilization, and we are a hugely promising civilization as well. So that is something that again adds further value to what India really means to countries like Austria.
Absolutely. Gautam Roy, thank you very much for joining us live from Vienna. You have a long day ahead tomorrow as well. We'll, of course, will keep coming back to you in few moments from now again. Thank you as of now, Gautam. Well, before we wrap up, let's talk about some cricket news. A former Indian cricketer, Gautam Gambhir, has been appointed as the next head coach of Indian cricket team after the tenure of Rahul Dravid coming to an end with the conclusion of T20 World Cup 2024. BCCI Secretary Jay Shah confirmed on social media on Wednesday, having taken over as team mentor of the Kolkata Knight Riders ahead of the IPL 2024. Gambhir has hailed for guiding the franchise to the title, having already captained KKR to 2 league titles during his playing days. Gautam Gambhir's first assignment in charge will be white ball tour of Sri Lanka, comprising 3 ODIs and 3 T20s later this month. Reacting after being appointed as the coach, Gambhir wrote on social media platform X, "India is my identity and serving my country has been the greatest privilege of my life. I'm honoured to be back. I'll be wearing a different hat, but my goal is the same as it has always been, to make every Indian proud. The men in blue shoulder the dreams of 1.4 billion Indians, and I will do everything in my power to make these dreams come true." Unquote. Well, that's it for this edition of DD India News Hour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India across the globe on DD India mobile app, and this app is available on both iOS and Android platforms. The code is on your screen. You can scan the code to download it now, and we'll be back just in a bit with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Sakal Bhatt signing off from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News. Are coming up next, Tanvi Taneja. Stay tuned to DD.